This match is an absolute grind. Every single big blind is being fought over. And it's just really fun to play the match like this because you have to look for creativity in small spots. And every single pot, you must be focused because it's gonna be a game of inches. It's gonna come down to the 2 big blinds here, the 3 big blinds there. Did you bet the flop or did you check? What bet size did you use? And so I'm really deep into this match and really focused. What's up guys, Alec is back in action and I have a couple free hours in the morning, so I'm mixing up my routine a little bit. Usually I play poker in the afternoons, but I have a couple free hours in the morning before a lesson later today after lunch, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna get out of the house and I'm gonna go play poker at one of my favorite coffee shops. They have these really cool eclectic lattes that are like super Instagrammable, but anyway, they have fun, cool drinks and I could sit outside. It's beautiful, and most importantly for me, it changes my headspace. It really doesn't feel like work to me. It doesn't feel like I'm grinding when I'm sitting at a beautiful coffee shop. I'm drinking my little latte, and I'm just kind of hanging out outside. I'm in the hustle and bustle of other people. Not too much because the whole thing, but it feels cool. Like I'm around other people, I'm out of the house, and I don't feel like I'm stuck in the office grinding. And so for me, that puts me in a really good headspace and allows me to sit there and feel patient, feel disciplined, feel like I'm having fun playing, and just handle whatever adversity is gonna be thrown my way today in the games. So I've played 2 sessions now, as you know, and I'm picking up a little bit of what we talked about last time, that collective psychology of how the games play. So I'm noticing there are very aggressive opponents, and some of the pros are putting a lot of pressure in certain spots where their range of hands, so the types of hands that they can have, are stronger than the types of hands that you can have, and they're applying a lot of pressure there. I call that range leverage, meaning they're taking their range and they're applying pressure when their range is stronger. And so it's a good strategy, and it's what you should be doing. And so you're seeing that happen from the pros. But you're also seeing, you're also seeing them 3-bet in certain spots. So like from the small blind, people like to 3-bet a lot, pretty standard in today's landscape. You're seeing down bets on the flop. A down bet simply meaning a small bet size used on the flop. Typical sign of a pro. But you're also seeing in these games, biggest game on the site, you're seeing VIPs. So you're seeing 2 things. One, a common sign of a VIP I found is they buy in 1,000. So they buy in $1,000 to a $2,000 buy-in game. You're also seeing sometimes just limping, which is a sign of a VIP as well. It's a clear sign of a bad player, limping in a 6-handed game. Almost should never do that unless you're like super elaborate, trying to make yourself look like a fish to be the pro, and probably not on that level, right? So I'm excited for the games today. I do have like unique strategies now that I've developed for the pros versus the VIPs, and I'm gonna implement that today. I have like a few of these adjustments I'm gonna make to the pros in certain spots where small blind to big blind is one that I've identified where I'm seeing them attacking a lot. So I have some adjustments I'm gonna make to spots like that, applying more pressure in certain spots to mix up my game in small blind to big blind scenarios, and the button as well. So maybe utilizing a smaller raise size on the button to take away the 3-bet from the small blind and allow myself to call more raises in position and make it less advantageous for the small blind to 3-bet me, because you're seeing that happen a lot. So those are some of the adjustments I make. I'm looking forward to this great eclectic drink, sitting at this coffee shop, winning a few dollars. Tables open. I got 5-10 game because there's no action on the 10-20. So I have a 5-10 game. One guy's sitting with 1,000, another guy's 900. So hopefully the second guy's a VIP. And then I have a 10-20 game. I'm playing heads up where the guy has full stack. So we'll see how it goes. Probably a pro. All right, first hand, I got 3-bet by the guy in the small blind. I'm testing out that 4-betting strategy of the adjustment I wanted to make from small blind to big blind. First hand, let's test it out. All right, I 4-bet with the queen 9 as a bluff. He calls, and the flop is 9-6-5 all spades. I have queen 9 with the queen of spades. I'm gonna just check this flop and potentially let him bluff. He checks, so I'm gonna bet small on the turn, very small, and he instant folds. So I guess it kind of worked because I won the hand, but not really because he called my bet, so adjustments. Alright guys, welcome to the lab. If you're still here, thank you so much for your attention. It would really mean the world to me if you hit that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm and us show this video to more people, and really signifies to me that you like this content so I can keep producing more of it for you. Also, if you're new here or you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when more awesome content like this comes your way. We have a ton of other content on this channel as well, including Hand of the Days, where I break down more hands, ask Alex, or answer your questions, and more. Now let's dive into the most key hands during this session. The first hand kicks off with me playing heads up against one of the pros in this game. We're playing 10-20, and he opens to 60 on the button, which he'd been doing pretty much every time he'd been opening. So this is a standard raise. I make it 240 in the big blind with ace-4 of diamonds, and he calls. Flop comes down gin for me, 4-4 deuce with a flush draw. I go ahead and make a small bet here of 160, and I think this is a key point in the hand, utilizing a small bet sizing on this flop, because this is a board where it doesn't change really anything about the ranges of the two players. So this board is innocuous. It doesn't really change anything. It's unlikely to have hit either opponent. And therefore, my range is still slightly stronger than his because I was the re-raiser pre-flop. And I want to bet this board with all of my hands. So I'm going to want to bet this board close to 100% of the time. And so it's important to utilize a small bet sizing here from a game theory standpoint on this board. Smaller bet sizes allow you to bet with more hands. It keeps your range balanced. It makes you harder to play against. Now, exploitatively, meaning what I want to happen in this particular moment is I want him to float me. If I use a small bet size, he's likely to either float me here with a call or potentially bluff raise me on the flop. And so when I bet small, it allows him to defend with more hands because he's getting a better price. It's just basic math. So it's a good bet size to use from both standpoints, and that's really what you want to be looking for. You want to be looking for the convergence of what the theory says and what the exploitative play says, and when those two things overlap, you know you have the right strategy. So in this moment, I decide to bet small. He goes ahead and calls the flop, and the turn comes to Jack of Hearts, which some people could say is a bad turn for me. Of course, a flush draw now got there, but I think a lot of his flush draws would just raise the flop and potentially get it in. Maybe he calls with some flush draws on the flop too, but if he has a flush, I'm going broke. It's a 3-bet pot, we're heads up, I have trips. I'm not folding this hand. So the only question I have in my mind is, what is the best way to put more money in the pot? I think because, going back to what I said on the flop, I utilized a small bet size, he's going to be floating this flop with a lot of hands. Maybe some ace highs, maybe some king highs, and a lot of those hands are going to have one heart in it. Right? He's going to have something like ace-jack with a heart, or maybe not ace-jack, maybe like ace-10 with a heart, or king-queen with a heart. So if I bet this turn, those hands might fold. Maybe they jam. I could get them to jam if I bet small, but I think checking is better for my overall range. It's a better play overall because a lot of times when I'm giving up here, let's say I have ace-queen of diamonds, I'm going to just check this turn and give up, concede the pot. So it's important when you're developing a strategy, especially against solid players, that you're balanced. You're doing some things with strong hands, you're doing some things with weak hands. And so on this turn, I think the tendency for people is to just bet when they have something. And so when they check, they never really have anything and they just open themselves up, they make themselves more vulnerable. So I decided to check here and pick off his bluffs. Allow him to bluff with all the hands that floated me on the flop. Maybe he turns a hand into a bluff that's repping a flush. So I challenge you to think about things on a little bit deeper of a level and go like one level deeper, 2 levels deeper, and think about, what does your hand look like? What does he think you have? What do you think he thinks he has? And vice versa. I butchered that, but you get the idea. So I check the turn, he bets 280, and now I just decide to call. And this is where people sometimes mess this up. They get the turn check right, but then they go all in. What does going all in accomplish? Yes, I protect my hand if a fourth heart comes off on the river, but not only is the board paired, and so I block some of those fourth hearts, like if the ace of hearts comes, I hit a boat, but also if I raise the turn, all of his bluffs fold. What if he has king-queen with a heart? He's just going to fold. If I call the turn, he might bluff all in on the river. So I'm taking a calculated risk here. I'm taking a risk that a blank comes on the river and I could pick off his bluffs. right? So I decide to call the turn. The river comes in offsuit 7, complete blank for me. I check. He goes all in. Of course, I snap call, and he has queen jack offsuit. So my logic was right. He did float the flop with nothing. He hit a jack on the turn, thought his hand was good, and decided to bet all in with it on the river. But the point remains, if he had something like king-queen, the play he made would have been the same, and I would have been able to pick off his bluff. So I'm really proud of how I played this one. I won a big pot because of it, and on to the next hand. Playing this interesting guy heads up, definitely a pro, but he has a very unique style. What I love about poker is that everyone's personality is expressed through their game. And so this guy, I wish I could know him in person because I'd get a better vibe for him. But he's really interesting because he pots it every time pre-flop, so he raises pot. But he almost always checks back the flop, and he does it on innocuous boards. So even like ace, king, 6, or paired boards, he's just checking back, and he'll often check to the river. So we've had this interesting dynamic where a lot of hands get checked to the river, and then I utilize these very small bet sizes. So I'm betting like min bet on the river, which is basically a sixth of the pot, or betting very small. And it's just a very grindy of a match. So think of a tennis rally, think of a tennis game. There's different types of tennis matches. Some tennis matches you have, you know, players like Pete Sampras, who hits the ball and runs to the net and ends the point, and it's like high intensity, moving a lot. Or a football game where there's a lot of passing. This is the opposite of that. It's a tennis game with a lot of baseline and rallies. It's a football game where you run the ball 2 yards every play. So I like to think about it in these sports terms because it puts me in the right mindset to think about how I need to approach the match. This match is an absolute grind. Every single big blind is being thought over. And it's just really fun to play the match like this because you have to look for creativity in small spots. And every single pot, you must be focused because it's gonna be a game of inches. It's gonna come down to the 2 big blinds here, the 3 big blinds there. Did you bet the flop or did you check? What bet size did you use? And so I'm really deep into this match and really focused, and it's really exciting. So back on the grind, still got 3 tables open, and let's grind this out. As I told you in the vlog, I was utilizing a small bet size against this opponent very often. We would grind it out, check to the river, and I would bet like 1/6 the pot, 1/5 the pot. He called me the first few times, and I always showed him a strong hand. So that kind of is the history that goes into the psychology I utilized in the hand I'm about to tell you. So he raises the button, I call with 8-7 offsuit, no heart, and the flop comes ace, queen, 3 with 2 hearts. Check, check, turns a 6 of hearts, check, check again. And remember, I have no heart in my hand, and the river's a jack of hearts. Now at this point, instead of bluffing with a big sizing, I decided to use the same small bet size I used when I had strong hands, just to try to get him to fold a pair. I would be betting any heart with a small size in this spot, and it's important to remember that your risk reward is so much better when you use a small bet size. You really don't have to have your bet work that often when I decide to bet $30 on this river. I only have to have my bet work 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 times to break even. So basically, I'm just wagering if he doesn't have a heart 1 out of 5 times, I'm gonna pop it. And frankly, he folded the river here, but it's a spot where people often bet too big and they cut down their risk reward, and so their play has to work so much more frequently, and it's not as profitable of a play. So they get the logic right, but they get the bet sizing wrong, and that ends up turning a profitable play into a losing one. And so I liked how this hand really turned out. It's a small hand, but like I told you, poker's a game of inches at a high level, and when you're grinding out these long matches where the football equivalent of running 2 yards, like I said, every single bet size matters. Every single hand matters. And this is a clear example of a hand where utilizing these tiny bet sizes and these exploitative plays are really going to help push the edge and move that needle forward. So I used a lot of these plays. I wanted to show you one of them, but this is really what was, you know, a key deciding factor in the match of just finding these little spots to gain edges and ultimately coming out a winner. All right, we're mixing it up here. I got 3 tables of 10-20 action now, so we actually have quite a bit of action here. Some pretty good games. I'm playing heads up on 2 tables, and I think I'm playing against the same guy because he has some of the same tendencies. I'm trying not to read too much into that and trying to judge each situation at face value and really stick to a solid foundational game plan. My last hand at 5-10, I called the raise with 8s. I just bought the set. This is beautiful. But I'm going to get off this 5-10 game and really focus on 10-20 and just hold my head in the same place, all the same game, all the same stakes, same player pool. And yeah, it's pretty good action so far. This 10-20 game I was playing heads up is now filling up. So there's 4 players here. It's moving pretty quick. The next hand comes up on my other table. We're now playing 4-handed. And I mentioned to you in the preface to this vlog that I wanted to adjust my strategy in the small blind to big blind. I noticed a lot of players calling raises often in the big blind when I open in the small blind, so I decided to raise bigger. Instead of raising 60 like I normally do, I made it 80 here with king 10 of hearts, and I wanted to use a bigger size because I'm not getting 3-bet often, but I'm getting called a lot, so I wanted to make it less advantageous for them to call me in position. So I make it 80, the big blind calls, and the flop comes king 10 8 with 2 spades. I check, going for a check raise here, because a lot of my hands are going to just check this flop. Maybe a hand like queens or jacks, or maybe ace jack or ace queen, or maybe just complete air. So I want to give the villain a chance to bet and then put in a big raise, and if the turn comes a blank, I could apply a lot of pressure, because this is a very coordinated board, very sketchy board, and I want to make the pot as big as possible to deny equity from his draws. I check, he bets 80, and now I make a big raise here to 400. So I think sometimes, just like in the last hand, people get the narrative right, but they get the sizing wrong. Raising to something like 240, 280, when you're out of position on a coordinated board, doesn't really accomplish anything. You allow all of his strong hands or all of his equity just to call in position, and he's not really making a mistake against you. Remember, the point of raising here is to deny him the chance to call you and have implied odds, or call you and win a big pot on a later street. To accomplish that, you need to utilize a very big sizing here, because any of his draws are going to have decent amount of odds, decent amount of equity against your hand, and so you want to raise big here to really prevent that from happening. Also, if he does have a hand like king queen, he might just get it in because he has top pair in a blind to blind battle. He's not going to fold, so you get a lot of value when he has a made hand as well. I make it 400, he calls, and the turn comes a jack. Very coordinated turn now. There are so many bad river cards for my hand. Any ace, any queen, any 9, any spade, or a jack, all really kill my hand and kill my action. So the pot is now basically 1,000. I have about 1,400 behind. I don't want to do something like bet 400 and then have him call and then be out of position on the river when one of these bad cards come. And then what do? I have to check fold, or I check and maybe he turns his hand into a bluff and I have to fold my hand, or simply I just bet 400 and he's getting a great price to call with a hand that has a lot of equity. Even a hand like Queen Jack has plenty of equity against my King 10, so I really don't want to allow him to call here on this turn and realize his equity for a cheap price and put me in a tough spot on the river. Any bet I make is committing to this pot, so I just decided to jam here. I apply max pressure. He still can call here if he has like 40% equity, and he's going to have that equity with some of those hands. So I want to deny that. I want to force him to either put it all in behind and really pay the max price for a draw, or commit to the pot if he has a hand like King Queen and he's just going for it, or maybe Jack 10 and he's just hits 2 pair and I cooler him. Or if he does have a hand that's a draw, I want him to fold that. I don't want him to get to the river for cheap, right? So I go all in and he tanks for a long time and ends up folding. But I think I played this hand well, and I'm really happy with the creativity I used with the sizing in this spot like this that allowed me to ultimately win this pot, take it down, and not put myself in a tough spot on the river. Now, let's wrap this up. So far, we're 3 for 3, guys. Great session. Just feels good to have momentum and just be building, doing well. I'm really enjoying this. I have to say, guys, I have you to thank. You guys are definitely largely responsible for this, because I feel really inspired to play, documenting my journey, sharing it with you. It just gives it so much more fuel for me and meaning. And also, I know I'm gonna have to report these hands to you guys. So one of the things I always tell clients, or one of the things clients always report to me, is just having you as a coach helps me play better, because they know that during our sessions together, they're gonna have to tell me their hands. They're gonna have to tell me, hey, I made this play, I made a stupid play. And they know, Coach Alec, what's he gonna tell me? Don't make this stupid play. So I feel the same way. Like, you guys are that accountability factor that keeps me honest. And it's like, well, I'm gonna have to talk about this hand. Do I really want to shove it all in here in this spot? So it really helps me stay accountable and just like stay focused too. A lot of positivity from you guys. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome so far. For the results, we're up 23.98 in a little over an hour. So not bad. Great session. One buy-in, but you know, playing some decent stakes, so it adds up quick. First one, 11,400 in 2 hours. Then we had 1,500 in an hour, hour and a half. and then this one 2,400 in a little over an hour. So basically 15,300 in 4.5 hours. Not a bad hourly, 3,400 an hour. Of course, not sustainable at 10:20, but I'll take it while it happens. It's great to be off to a good start. And that was probably one of the most delicious cups of coffee I've ever had. So I enjoyed my latte. Thanks for being here with me. I'll see you on the next episode of Alec in Action.